Join us today as we explore one of the most unusual murder cases. Although we've encountered numerous murder cases in the past, this one stands out for its unusual choice of weapon, something that can be found in every household but would never be suspected as a murder weapon. Today we'll delve into a tragic and gruesome crime where the victim was only several days old. What led to this horrific act? And was the murderer insane or mentally unstable? We'll uncover the facts from the beginning, starting with the events of August 30th, 2005 in Ohio, USA. Terrell and his girlfriend China arrived at a children's healthcare center with their daughter Paris, who was suffering from a high fever and severe injuries. The doctors quickly examined the little girl in an effort to save her, but informed her parents that she was burned from being exposed to a temperature of 95 degrees. Despite their efforts to revive her, the infant was not breathing and had no blood pressure or pulse. The doctors tried to resuscitate her for 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Terrell and China were in a separate room, overwhelmed with grief, crying, and screaming about what had happened to their baby. Terrell asked China if she heard the doctors mention the high temperature exposure. China replied that Paris wasn't even burned. The doctors observed the argument between the couple, with one nurse saying that minutes later, emergency personnel announced the baby's death. The cause of death was unclear as the baby's burns were not typical, not caused by hot liquid or direct fire. Something strange occurred, and it will be further investigated. The police were called by the doctors due to the strange nature of the incident, as they suspected it may have been a murder instead of an accident. The parents' statements about the type of burns on the baby were not found to be credible by the doctors. The unusual nature of the injury raises suspicions. Let's learn more about the mother, China, and the father, Terrell. China was 25 years old at the time, with 3 children aged 9, 7, and 4. She lived with her boyfriend Terrell in an apartment, and they had their last baby, Paris, who was 28 days old at the time of her death. Terrell was a drug addict and often got into fights with China due to his uncontrolled actions. Their arguments were often loud and could be heard by neighbors. On Monday, August 28, the day before the incident, the couple had a loud argument that was witnessed by a neighbor who claimed to have seen Terrell hit China. The cause of the dispute was unknown, but it was clear it was a big fight. At the hospital, the doctors questioned China to gain information about the child's condition. China stated that she and Terrell left the children with her sister Leonda the night before while they went out. China returned to the apartment without Terrell at 2:00 a.m. and tried to feed Paris, but she wouldn't eat. She noticed Paris was warm, so she put her in bed with a fan and went to sleep. In the morning, China got her 3 children ready for school and checked on Paris before sending them off. Feeling uneasy, she called Terrell and asked him to come to the apartment and take Paris to the hospital. However, China's story was of no use to the doctors as she did not explain the cause of the baby's bizarre burns. The doctors therefore contacted the police and an investigation was launched. Terrell and China were called in for questioning by the police. At the police station, China was questioned about the events of the previous night and gave a different account than she had previously provided. She claimed to have returned home between 9:30 and 10:00 p.m., where her sister Leonda was waiting, and that the baby was fine. China stated she laid Paris on her lap and fell asleep, then woke up to Paris crying at 2:30 a.m. and fed her. After putting Paris back on her lap, China fell asleep once again. In the morning, Terrell was sleeping next to her, but Paris couldn't be found. China thought Terrell had tucked her in bed. However, Terrell denied all of China's claims when questioned by the police. Terrell stated that he arrived at the apartment around 3 to 4 a.m. and slept on the couch, and upon waking up found Paris sleeping on the other couch, appearing to be dead. The discrepancy in the couple's stories added to the complexity of the situation. The parents were at a loss as to what had happened to their baby. China and Terrell were both crying and struggling to control their emotions as they had lost their child. This is why their accounts of the events seemed inconsistent. The police decided to search their apartment for any clues or evidence that might shed light on the mysterious disappearance of their baby. Upon arriving at the apartment, the police conducted a thorough search, looking for any signs of what might have caused the burns on the baby's body. Although the police were aware that Paris had been burned, they lacked any concrete evidence to support this. However, their search of the apartment yielded no results. When the forensic medicine report came back, the investigators were shocked and confused by the findings. The baby's body was cold and rigid to the touch, with no burn marks, only peeling skin. The mystery deepened with the strange observation that Paris's clothes were remarkably clean despite her injuries, suggesting there should have been some residue of skin, liquid, or something else on them. The internal examination was devastating, revealing that Paris's blood had been heated to boiling temperatures, over 100 degrees Celsius, resulting in the burning of all her internal organs, unevenly with her back seemingly unscathed. The detectives' search of the home for evidence proved fruitless as they were unable to determine the cause of the burns, even after examining all electrical appliances, the heater, and the kitchen oven. The fact that the baby was intentionally burned, but the identity of the culprit remained unknown, left everyone bewildered. The police searched the apartment multiple times, but found nothing of significance, only a plastic dish with dirty water. When questioned, China claimed she had given Paris a bath earlier that day and forgotten to dispose of the water. The water was collected for analysis. The police also interviewed the neighbors for any information about the incident. One neighbor reported seeing China at her window at 4 a.m., leading the police to re-question China. When asked why she had lied about being asleep, China admitted she was waiting for Terrell, but when he returned, Paris was dead in his arms. China said she loved Terrell and didn't want to implicate him. The police now had a suspect, Terrell. He was also interrogated, asked about his whereabouts and return time. Terrell's story remained consistent, and he stated that the baby was with her mother the entire time and that China was lying. As a result, the police released him, as his statements did not change. On the other hand, China's story changed multiple times, even after the testimony of a neighbor. This led to her being detained by the police for endangering her child. It was clear that she was the only one with the baby, Paris, when she was injured. Despite numerous examinations, the cause of Paris's death remained a mystery. Forensic pathologists only knew that she had strange burns. If it was a murder, then where was the weapon? No murder can be committed without a weapon. However, these allegations may not be true as the police have not yet proven anything, including that it was a murder. It may have been an accident, or perhaps a third party was involved. In prison, China couldn't stop crying over her deceased baby. Not only did she lose her child in a terrible way, but she was also imprisoned without solid evidence. The judge ruled that China was not guilty, and she was released from jail a few days later. In 2006, a forensic pathologist was reviewing studies on a group of pigs that underwent experiments with microwaves, heating them up in a microwave to observe the effects on the animal. The pigs used for the experiment were roughly the size of an infant baby, since a fully grown pig is too big to fit in a microwave. While reviewing the studies, the forensic pathologist learned of a tragic incident in Virginia where a 1-month-old baby, Joseph Lewis, was killed by being microwaved. On September 23, 1999, the baby was found dead in the microwave, with his body covered in red spots and pimples. The examination revealed that he died after his body was heated in the microwave for 10 minutes straight, resulting in a blood temperature of 106 degrees. The police investigation uncovered that Joseph's mother, Elizabeth, was responsible for his death. At 17 years old, Elizabeth was suffering from epilepsy and depression and had discontinued her medication during her pregnancy, causing her mental state to deteriorate. Joseph's father reported that Elizabeth experienced severe seizures, especially after the loss of her brother in a car accident. Plagued by deep sadness, Elizabeth confusedly believed she had put a bottle of milk in the microwave when she actually put her baby inside. She was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Crying, Elizabeth declared her love for her baby and claimed to have no memory of the horrific act. The forensic pathologist, upon reviewing the case, requested a medical examination for Joseph and discovered that the burns on his body were similar to those found on Paris. This led to a reopening of Paris's case and a search of their apartment with the focus on the microwave. The apartment was unoccupied as China and Terrell had left it after the death of their daughter, Paris. However, the microwave was still in the apartment. On May 18, 2006, the police took the microwave from the apartment and sent it to the forensic laboratory for examination. The forensic pathologist noted that the size of Paris was such that she could easily fit inside the microwave. After a thorough examination of the interior, they found DNA samples belonging to Paris, particularly on the top of the microwave. This led the forensic pathologist to conclude that the burns on Paris's body were related to the heating element in that type of microwave. They discovered that Paris was lying on her back in the microwave when it was turned on, which explained why the burns were limited to her upper body and her back was not affected. Finally, the police found the murder weapon, the microwave, which was an unexpected and unusual discovery, as murder weapons are typically guns or knives. The final piece of the puzzle was to uncover the identity of the murderer, who would put a 28-day-old infant in a microwave, and why. The medical report showed that Paris died between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. after being heated for over 2 minutes in the microwave, and her body temperature reaching 107 degrees. The police focused on the baby's parents to uncover what had happened that night. On November 27, 2006, China and Terrell were arrested and questioned again. The first court hearing focused on China, as she was the last one with the baby at home. But Terrell then revealed a surprising fact, that 3 of China's children were not his biological children and Paris was his only biological daughter. One of China's children told Terrell that her nephew had put Paris in the microwave, and Terrell took the body out. The witness was an 8-year-old who saw the nephew sneak Paris into the microwave. China's sister was babysitting the children at the time, and her son was with her. It was unclear if China's nephew had stayed overnight at their house, as China's sister had left by the time the baby was killed at 1 a.m. However, it's possible, as there have been instances of children being convicted of even more heinous crimes. Hence, age is no longer a reliable indicator of criminal behavior. The primary question was who was responsible for the murder, and whether China's nephew was the culprit. After an investigation, the judge declared a mistrial because China threatened and coerced the nephew into confessing and made her 8-year-old testify against him. Despite her efforts to deceive the police, she was caught. During 3 separate court sessions, China's lawyer, John Ryan, tried to defend her and accused others, claiming that she suffered from mental issues. But the truth of the matter is that on the night of the incident, China and Terrell went out and left their kids with Leonda, China's sister, at 7 p.m. Terrell and China purchased alcohol and went to a park to drink. A fight erupted, as previously mentioned, and escalated when they reached their home's parking lot. Terrell slapped China, causing her to fall and then bite him. The altercation was very chaotic, and both were highly intoxicated, with China unable to walk properly. China told the police they were fighting over driving the car, but later admitted it was over Terrell's paternity of Paris. Terrell refused to admit Paris was his daughter and accused China of infidelity, but the police confirmed Paris was indeed his child. After the fight, China went to her apartment, where her sister Leonda found her in a drunken state and stayed with her for 40 minutes before leaving for her home. Meanwhile, Terrell went to his friend's house who dealt drugs and spent the night there. The next morning, Terrell returned to his apartment and found Paris lying on the couch, as he stated during the investigation. Despite China's refusal to confess, the police had enough evidence to prove her guilt. The substances on the plastic dish matched the one found inside the microwave, which was the skin of baby Paris. China was the only one with Paris in the apartment, and while in jail, She got into a fight with another woman who called her a children killer. China replied, "I didn't mean to do that." A fellow prisoner claimed that China admitted to putting Paris in the microwave while drunk. China had a prior criminal record, including a 2000 conviction for kidnapping and a 2002 arrest for forgery, leading to her ultimate conviction for murder in 2011. To determine if China had any mental health issues, she was examined by a doctor. After 3 trials, she was sentenced to life in prison for aggravated murder. Upon receiving her sentence, China hung her head and began to cry. Michelle cried hysterically and claimed that China was a beloved member of the family. However, she showed no tears or sympathy for the death of her niece, Paris, who was tragically killed by her sister, China. Michelle expressed concern only for her murderer sister, not for the innocent baby who was a victim of a horrific crime. If Michelle valued China so much, why not join her in prison? They both deserved to be there. What was even more surprising from my research is that this was not the only case of a mother killing her baby in a microwave. Humans have reached disturbing levels, resorting to the most bizarre and inhumane methods for murder. Paris was an innocent, just 1 month old, with the only sin of being born to a cruel mother. Our story has now come to an end. If you liked it, please like the video and share it to support me. Thank you, and stay tuned for more.